early 1800s, on the Tennessee frontier, something terrible was said to dwell in the shadows. The Bell family's homestead was meant to be a place of safety, but it became the stage for one of America's most infamous hauntings. This is the story of the Bell Witch. The Bell family's homestead lay on a gentle rise above a slow, winding river in Robertson County, Tennessee. The land was fertile and green, dotted with tall oaks and tangled hedgerows. Fields of corn and tobacco stretched under a wide, patient sky. Life here was built on labor and ritual, the turning of soil, the tending of animals, the comforting rhythm of seasons. John Bell, the patriarch, was respected and prosperous. His wife, Lucy, kept the home warm and orderly, while their children ran barefoot through the fields, laughing in the summer sun and huddling around the fire in winter. Neighbors were few but trusted. Church gatherings, harvest meals, and shared work bound the small community together. In these first years, peace settled over the Bell property like a blessing. Evenings ended with the sound of frogs in the marsh and crickets in the grass. Nights were velvet dark and silent, save for the wind sighing through trees. It was a hard life, but an honest one. No one suspected the land might be holding something restless, something waiting for the right moment to wake. But there were older stories about those woods. Tales of ancient burials, curses whispered in the dark, strange lights flickering among the trees. The Bells, like most settlers, dismissed such superstitions. They would soon learn that some warnings were worth heeding. The quiet began to break with small, almost laughable disturbances. Tapping sounds on the cabin walls at night, as if someone were playing a childish prank. They blamed animals at first, but the sounds grew louder and more deliberate, coming in rapid patterns like knocking hands on wood. Chairs scraped across the floor with no one near them. Tools left in the yard were flung aside or disappeared. The family dog bristled and barked at corners of the room, refusing to calm even when scolded. At night, the children whimpered that something was moving just beyond the glow of the hearth. One autumn evening, the family heard steady footsteps pacing the porch. When John opened the door, no one was there. He walked the perimeter with a lantern, but the fields lay empty under the pale moon. The family tried to go back to sleep, but the knocking returned, harder than before, as if demanding entry. Word spread among neighbors. A few offered prayers. Others scolded the family for inviting evil with their doubts. Some offered to stay over to prove it was all imagination. They left pale-faced and silent, refusing to talk about what they'd heard at night. Soon the disturbances grew personal. Cold gusts of air circled the bedrooms, even with the shutters nailed tight. Groceries spoiled overnight. Children found their hair twisted into knots. It was as if the house itself had turned hostile, resenting their presence. As weeks bled into months, the spirit became unmistakably intelligent and cruel. It seemed to relish the fear it caused. It mimicked voices in the dark, repeating family secrets no outsider could have known. Laughter rang through the halls without warning, harsh and mocking, as if something invisible watched them constantly. Betsy, the youngest daughter, suffered most. She felt icy fingers grip her hair and yank it so violently she cried out in pain. Bruises bloomed on her arms and back with no visible cause. Sometimes she was thrown from her bed entirely, landing in a heap on the floor as her siblings screamed. Lucy Bell prayed constantly, clutching to the Bible, but even scripture seemed to anger the entity. It knocked the holy book from her hands, tore pages, and cursed her in a guttural, rasping voice. John Bell felt it worst of all. The spirit singled him out for relentless humiliation, insulting him with words spat from the air itself. Visitors came to witness the haunting. They arrived as skeptics, eager to mock the frightened family, but left as believers, some trembling, others weeping. The entity performed for them, rapping on tables, dragging furniture, hissing obscenities in an empty room. It was as if fear itself fed it, made it stronger. There was no sleep in the Bell household now, just long, terror-filled nights where every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of wind became a warning. The family grew hollow-eyed and thin, bound together by a terror they could not explain and could not flee. By the second year, the haunting consumed the entire farm. Crops withered without cause. Livestock died with no wounds, found stiff in the fields at dawn. Neighbors avoided the property entirely, claiming they heard screams and laughter echoing from it at night. John Bell's health collapsed under the strain. He became gaunt, his skin sallow, his eyes bloodshot from endless sleepless nights. He heard the spirit even in the fields, whispering threats in a voice only he could hear. It promised to kill him, to drag him down to hell. He aged a decade in months, his back bowing, hands trembling. Lucy tried to care for him, but she too was battered by fear. The children became silent, withdrawn, watching the walls as if expecting them to crack open and reveal some monstrosity. Food went untouched. Fires burned low and cold. The spirit saved its worst for John's final days. It announced his coming death with glee, screeching it into the ears of visitors and family alike. He began convulsing, feverish, unable to speak as the presence seemed to crawl over him, pressing the breath from his lungs. When he finally died, they found a strange, dark powder near his bed. The spirit claimed it had poisoned him, shrieking its triumph in a voice that rattled the windows and brought the family to its knees. Even in death, it would not grant him peace. John Bell was buried in the frozen earth under a sky as grey as ash. Neighbours watched the funeral in horrified silence, some crossing themselves, others refusing to stand too near the family, as if fear itself might be contagious. The spirit howled with laughter all through the burial service, unseen but unmistakable. For a time after his death, the attacks lessened. Betsy was still troubled by whispers and the feeling of cold fingers brushing her neck, but the violence slowed. Lucy kept the Bible near at all times, reading aloud until her voice cracked. The surviving children clung to each other, older before their time, but the quiet was uneasy, like a predator resting after a kill. It was said the spirit promised to return in 7 years. Some claimed it did, visiting one of John's sons in the dead of night, telling him secrets of the future, mocking him for his father's fate. Long after the family abandoned the farm, travelers reported strange sounds in the woods nearby, knocking on trees, laughing that carried on the wind, lights moving between the trunks with no lantern or torch. Locals refused to build on the land. Even today, the site is shunned, its soil believed to hold a curse that will never be lifted. The legend of the Bell Witch has never died. It endures in whispered stories, in the creaking of old houses, in the terror that makes people glance over their shoulders in the dark. For in that Tennessee wilderness, something was awakened that would not rest, and perhaps it still waits, hungry for fear, listening for the sound of knocking on the walls. This is the story of the Bell Witch, a true American haunting that shook a family to its core, claimed a life, and left behind a curse no one can explain. Some legends are born of imagination. Others refuse to die because they are real. If you think this story is over, think again. Darkness doesn't end, it waits, and the next one might be closer than you think. Subscribe before it finds you first.